Imagine you're walking alone down a dark street one morning. You see something that revolts you, an injustice happening right in front of you. Maybe it's someone being mugged, intimidated, humiliated. Your heart races. Your mind screams at you to do something. You feel this righteous fury burning in your chest, this primal urge to intervene, to fight, to restore what's right. But then reality sets in. You're just an ordinary person. You don't have superpowers. You have bills to pay, a family to protect, a reputation to maintain. So you do what society has taught you to do. You lower your head, grab your phone, maybe call the police, and keep walking. And this feeling of helplessness eats away at you for days. Now imagine if, instead of accepting this powerlessness, you decided to become the very thing criminals fear finding in the darkness. Imagine if you transformed your pain, your anger, and your frustration at injustice into something greater than yourself, a symbol that makes evil hesitate before acting. This isn't just Batman's origin. It's the secret fantasy of anyone who's ever felt too small to make the difference the world needs. It's the hidden dream of everyone who's ever looked at injustice and thought, if I could, if I had the power, if I weren't afraid of the consequences, I would do something. But here's what most people don't understand about Batman. He's not just a costumed billionaire fighting criminals. He's the purest representation of something psychology calls shadow alchemy, the conscious transformation of our darkest, most traumatic aspects into a force for good. We all have a crime alley in our lives. That moment, that experience, that trauma that left us with an open wound and a question that was never answered. Why does the world allow things like this to happen? The difference between us and Bruce Wayne isn't that he had the money to become a superhero. The difference is that he chose to use his pain as fuel instead of letting it consume his life. How many times have you felt like that kid in the alley? Powerless against forces that seem greater than you? How many times have you wanted to be more than just a spectator in your own life? More than just someone who accepts that things are the way they are? Over the next 15 minutes, we'll decode the deep psychology behind the Dark Knight and discover why sometimes you need to embrace your own darkness to become the light the world needs. We'll explore how Batman represents the most sophisticated use of the personal shadow in modern literature, not to destroy, but to protect, and most importantly, you'll discover how to apply these psychological principles to your own life. How to transform your fears, traumas, and frustrations into tools of empowerment. How to become not just someone who survives life's storms, but someone who becomes the storm when justice meets protection. Because the truth Batman teaches us is revolutionary. We don't overcome our inner demons by running. From them, we overcome them by learning to dance with them in the dark. Look at Bruce Wayne during the day. Billionaire, charming, irresponsible playboy. He smiles at social events, jokes about expensive cars and model girlfriends. People see him as someone who's never had a real problem in life, someone born with a silver spoon in his mouth, living a superficial and privileged existence. It's the perfect persona, the social mask he's constructed to protect not only his secret identity, but also to protect the world from seeing the true intensity of what lies beneath that facade. But behind that studied smile and those rehearsed jokes lies a man carrying a trauma so deep that it has shaped every aspect of his existence, a trauma that not only defined him, but which he consciously chose to use as a source of power rather than destruction. Have you ever had to smile when you were broken inside? Have you ever had to act like you were okay when your soul was screaming in pain? Have you ever felt compelled to hide your true intensity because the people around you couldn't handle the depth of your true feelings? Bruce Wayne lives this reality every day, but heightened to an extreme. He can't simply confide in a friend about his problems. He can't seek traditional therapy to process his trauma. He can't even show signs of something deeper moving him, because that would compromise a mission that's greater than his own need for a personal healing. And here's something that resonates deeply. How many times have you felt like you're living a double life? Not necessarily as a superhero, but as someone with a completely different public face and private reality. The competent professional who struggles with anxiety at home. The present parent who, deep down, is still processing childhood trauma. The successful person who carries secrets no one around them even imagines. The murder of Bruce Wayne's parents in Crime Alley isn't just a tragic event in fiction, it's the perfect representation of the moment when innocence dies and we're forced to confront the random brutality of the world. It's that moment when we realize that life isn't fair, that good people suffer for no reason, and that no amount of privilege, love, or kindness makes us immune to the cruelty of existence. We all have our crime alley. It might have been your parents' traumatic divorce, the loss of a loved one, a betrayal that shattered your trust in others, an injustice you witnessed but couldn't stop. It might have been the moment you realized the world wasn't going to protect you, that you were more alone than you imagined, that you would have to find strength in places you didn't even know existed. The pain Bruce Wayne carries isn't just about death or loss. It's about utter powerlessness. It's about being a child watching the only adults he trusted being destroyed by forces he couldn't understand or combat. It's about the terrifying realization that the world contains a level of cruelty and chaos that no amount of wealth, education, or privilege can eliminate. And here's what really hurts. He could have chosen 1,000 different ways to deal with this pain. He could have become a recluse, an alcoholic, a passive philanthropist, or simply someone who uses his wealth to insulate himself from the harsher realities of the world. But Bruce Wayne did something most of us are afraid to do. He looked directly at his inner darkness, his anger, his fear, his desire for revenge, his capacity for violence, and instead of denying or repressing these dark aspects, he asked, "How can I use this for something greater?" And the answer to that question wasn't to become a criminal or an uncontrolled vigilante. It was to become something much more sophisticated and psychologically complex. It was to become a symbol. And symbols, unlike people, are immortal. When Bruce Wayne sits in that chair at Wayne Manor, bleeding from his first failed attempt at fighting crime as a simple vigilante, and a bat flies through the window, he's not simply choosing a disguise. He's doing something few fictional heroes do so consciously and deliberately. He's choosing to master his own shadow. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the shadow represents all the aspects of our personality that we reject, repress, or deny: our capacity for violence, our primitive impulses, our justified anger, our potential for questionable acts. Most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow or being unconsciously controlled by it. Bruce Wayne does the opposite. He consciously embraces his shadow and transforms it into a precise and disciplined tool. The bat isn't just a symbol that scares criminals, it's the visual representation of all that is nocturnal, predatory, and terrifying in the human psyche, channeled for a noble purpose. Note that Batman is not Bruce Wayne in a costume. Batman is a completely separate personality, a psychological construct carefully crafted to be everything Bruce Wayne socially cannot be. Batman can be violent, intimidating, morally ambiguous, terrifying. He can inhabit dark spaces, both literal and metaphorical. He can use fear as a weapon and make choices Bruce Wayne could never justify at a charity dinner. This isn't pathological dissociation, it's sophisticated psychological architecture. It's the deliberate creation of a channel for aspects of the personality that, if repressed, would become destructive, but which, if disciplined, become an unstoppable force for justice And that's precisely why the Joker exists in Batman mythology. He's not just another villain, he's the archetype of the chaotic trickster, the representation of what happens when someone embraces the shadow without discipline, without purpose, without moral boundaries. The Joker represents the pure, anarchic. Shadow chaos for chaos's sake, destruction for fun's sake, violence as artistic expression. He is what Bruce Wayne could have become if he had chosen to embrace his darkness without moral direction. This is why the Joker is obsessed with Batman. He sees in him a disciplined, driven version of himself, someone who operates outside the conventional rules of society. But here's the deeper psychological insight. The Joker doesn't exist to be defeated. He exists to continually test Batman's moral limits. Each encounter between them is essentially the question: how far can you embrace your darkness without becoming the very thing you fight? And this brings us to the central conflict that defines not only Batman, but anyone who chooses to use their pain as a transformative force, the constant temptation to cross the line. Batman's no-kill rule doesn't exist because he's good at it. Exists because he knows he's exactly the kind of person who could kill with ease and moral justice. Batman's greatest battle has never been against the Joker, the Penguin, or Two-Face. His greatest battle is against the version of himself that might decide the end justifies any means. It's the daily struggle to maintain his humanity while operating in the darkness, to remain a protector when it would be so much easier to become a judge and executioner. Because here's the uncomfortable truth Batman represents. We all have this ability. We all have moments when we could morally justify crossing lines we swore never to cross. We all have a potential version of ourselves that could become the very thing we most despise. If the right circumstances aligned, Batman is fascinating because he consciously walks this line every day, yet manages to stay on the right side of it. And this doesn't happen by accident. It happens through fiercely built discipline, unwavering purpose, and the courage to face his own demons without blinking. To fully understand Batman's psychological genius, we need to delve into a concept that few psychology scholars apply to the analysis of fictional characters: the functional and controlled use of one's personal shadow through a shadow persona. In analytical psychology, we tend to think of the persona as the social mask we present to the world, our most palatable and socially acceptable self. But Bruce Wayne did something revolutionary. He created a second persona, a shadow persona, specifically designed to channel all the aspects of his personality that society ejects. This is not the same as being consumed by the shadow, as happens with psychopaths or criminals. This is conscious personality architecture, the deliberate construction of an alter ego that can access psychological power that would normally remain repressed or manifest. Destructively, here's the insight that most Batman analyses completely miss. Batman is not who Bruce Wayne really is. Batman is a tool Bruce Wayne created to get things done. It's a psychological technology, not a personality transformation. Think about it. When Bruce Wayne dresses up as Batman, he's not freeing himself to be his true self. He's equipping himself with a specific personality, designed for a specific function, much like a surgeon dons sterile gear for an operation. Batman is an instrument of psychological precision. Compare this to other characters dealing with trauma. The Hulk is Bruce Banner consumed by his repressed rage. The Joker is someone who has completely lost control of his dark impulses. Two-Face is a person literally torn between light and shadow, unable to choose which side will prevail. Batman is different. He maintains complete control over when and how he accesses his shadow. Bruce Wayne can dine with socialites, discuss art and wine, donate to charity, and be genuinely charming and functional. Hours later, Batman can intimidate criminals in dark alleys, use psychological interrogation techniques, and operate in worlds that would destroy the psyche of an ordinary person. And here's why this is relevant to your real life. We all have aspects of our personality that are powerful but socially problematic. We all have justified anger, competitive impulses, intense protective instincts, leadership abilities that could be seen as controlling, or emotional intensity that can intimidate. Others. The traditional psychology approach is to teach you how to manage or control these aspects. Batman's approach is different. It's about creating appropriate channels for these aspects to express themselves productively. Your anger at injustice can become fuel for effective activism. Your controlling tendencies can become leadership on projects that truly matter. Your emotional intensity can become passion that inspires others. Your protective instincts can become advocacy for people who can't defend themselves. The key is not to deny these parts of yourself. It's to create psychological uniforms, contexts, projects, causes, or roles where these aspects can be not only accepted, but necessary and powerful. Batman represents what Jung would call successful shadow integration. He didn't reject the dark aspects created by his trauma. He alchemized them into a force that protects others from experiencing the same kind of trauma he suffered. And here's the deeper insight. The more traumatic your experience, the greater your potential to become a source of protection and strength for others facing similar challenges. Your greatest wound can become your greatest medicine, not just for yourself, but for the world. Bruce Wayne didn't become Batman despite his trauma. He became Batman through his trauma, using it as raw material to build something that transcends his personal pain and becomes a protective force for an entire city. This is shadow alchemy at its finest, transforming what has hurt you most into what can most heal the world. There's a scene in The Dark Knight that perfectly sums up the depth psychology we're exploring. Batman interrogating the Joker in the police station. At first glance, it seems like a simple confrontation between hero and villain, but psychologically, it's much more complex. It's a direct encounter between the controlled and disciplined Shadow Batman and the pure anarchic Shadow Joker. Notice the dynamics of the scene. The Joker isn't afraid of Batman, he's fascinated by him. He sees in Batman someone who, like him, rejected normal social conventions and created his own rules. But there's a fundamental difference. Batman created rules to protect others. The Joker rejected rules to indulge his own inner chaos. When the Joker says, "You complete me," he's not joking. He's acknowledging that Batman represents the driven, morally grounded version of himself, someone who has transcended the conventional boundaries of human behavior. The most crucial moment of the scene isn't when Batman uses physical force. It's when the Joker reveals he's kidnapped both Harvey Dent and Rachel Dawes, and Batman has to choose which one to save, knowing he can't save both. This is the moment when the Joker forces Batman to confront his own limitations and make impossible choices. It's a perfect representation of something we all face. Moments where our best intentions aren't enough, where our strength has limits, where we have to live with the consequences of not being able to save everyone we love. But notice what Batman doesn't do in this scene. He doesn't break. He doesn't kill the Joker. Even though he knows it would solve many problems, he sticks to his rules even when it would be strategically advantageous to abandon them. This isn't moral naivety, it's psychological discipline. It's proof that he's mastering his shadow rather than being mastered by it. Now let's apply this to your real life. Pause the video and do this exercise with me. Identify a deep fear, trauma, or frustration in your life, something that makes you angry, that makes you feel powerless, that awakens impulses you normally repress. It could be injustices at work, family problems you can't resolve, social issues that upset you but you don't know how to combat. Now ask yourself, what symbol could I create in my life to transform the energy of this pain into productive force? If you feel anger about injustices in the workplace, what project could you start to train people on labor rights or professional ethics? If you've experienced relationship trauma, how could you use that experience to help others identify signs of toxic relationships? If you grew up struggling financially and it makes you anxious about security, how could you channel that energy into educating others about financial planning or income creation? The idea isn't to deny your pain or pretend it doesn't exist. It's to do like Batman. Use your pain as intel about where the world needs protection. Your deepest wounds often indicate where you can offer the most meaningful healing to others. Asterisk this. Weak, take concrete action even if small, driven by this transformation. Write a post about something you learned through your pain. Volunteer for a cause related to your trauma. Start a difficult conversation that might help someone. Create something, a project, a habit, a discipline that transforms your inner darkness into light for others. Will it be uncomfortable? Absolutely. Batman doesn't like to dwell in the shadows either. He does it because it's necessary. You are not doing this because it's easy or pleasurable. You are doing it because that's how wounds become wisdom, and wisdom becomes service. Remember, Batman doesn't exist to make life happy and easy. He exists so others can live safer lives. When you transform your pain into purpose, you're not just healing yourself, you're becoming a source of protection for people still battling the same demons you once faced. Asterisk. So what does Batman truly gain by embracing his darkness rather than denying it? What elixir does he bring from this journey through the shadows of his own psyche? He gains something few heroes achieve: purpose found in chaos, meaning extracted from trauma, and the ability to transform his greatest vulnerability into his greatest strength. Batman discovered the fundamental truth about psychological resilience. You don't overcome trauma by escaping it or denying its impact. You overcome it by consciously integrating it into the fabric of your identity, allowing it to inform your choices, motivate your actions, and direct your energy in ways that create meaning not only for you but for the world around. You don't remember the young Bruce Wayne in Crime Alley, small, scared, helpless, watching random violence destroy everything he considered safe and permanent in his life. He had no control, no power, no understanding of what was happening. He was purely a victim of circumstance, defined by what was done to him. Now look at Batman at the end of The Dark Knight. He chooses to be blamed for Harvey Dent's death to preserve the hope Harvey represents for Gotham. He accepts being hunted, hated, and misunderstood. He willingly becomes the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. This transformation represents the most profound psychological alchemy possible, from victim of circumstance to active architect of circumstance. Batman is no longer defined by what was done to him. He is defined by what he chooses to do in response to what was done to him. He carries the burden of darkness consciously, not because he's a masochist or because he enjoys suffering, but because he understands something fundamental. Someone must be willing to inhabit the shadows so that others can live in the light. Someone must be willing to be misunderstood so that the truth can be protected. That implicit question that rose in Crime Alley, why does the world allow things like this to happen, finally finds its answer. It's not that the world allows injustice because it's fundamentally cruel. It's that fighting injustice requires people willing to pay prices most people aren't willing to pay. The elixir Batman offers isn't just for billionaires with high-tech gadgets. It's for anyone willing to transform their deepest pain into protection for others still vulnerable to the same kind of pain. It's the discovery that your wounds can be portals to empathy, that your fears can be maps to where courage is most needed. That your traumas can be training to recognize and intervene when others face similar situations. Batman proves that you don't have to be consumed by your darkness to be informed by it. You can dance with your demons without becoming one of them. You can use your capacity for violence, manipulation, and intimidation in the service of protection and justice. And perhaps most importantly, you can carry immense emotional weight and still remain fundamentally committed to values that transcend your own pain. You can be a warrior without being a destroyer, a protector without being controlling, strong without being cruel. The lesson Batman teaches us transcends any superhero analysis and touches the core of human psychological transformation. We don't overcome our fear, our anger, or our pain by trying to hide from them or denying they exist. We overcome them by learning to use them as a master-conscious tool for actions that serve something greater than our own personal healing. Your inner darkness is not your enemy. It is your raw material. Your traumas are not evidence that you are broken. They are evidence that you survived something many would not, and that survival gave you knowledge that can protect others from facing the same. Batman shows us that real heroes aren't people who've never felt fear, anger, or dark impulses. Real heroes are people who felt these things deeply and chosen to use them as fuel to protect those most vulnerable. If this video resonated with you, if you recognized your own journey in transforming from Bruce Wayne into Batman, leave a comment. What is your personal crime alley? What trauma or deep pain in your life could you transform into a source of protection and strength for others? And most importantly, what small act of emotional vigilance can you practice this week? What injustice in your circle of influence at work, in your family, in your community could you confront using your own experience of pain as wisdom and motivation? Share this video with someone you know who is struggling to find meaning in their own suffering. Sometimes, the right perspective on our inner darkness can be exactly what someone needs to transform a victim mentality into a hero's journey. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for our ongoing journey through the psychology of modern myths, because every character, every story, every symbol that resonates deeply with millions of people is teaching us something fundamental about our own human nature and our potential for T. Rand's formation. Until the next analysis. And always remember, you don't need a cape to be a hero. You just need to have the courage to transform your darkness into light for others who are still lost in the same darkness you once inhabited. Your integrated shadow may be just the protection the world needs. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next shadows we explore together.